Hello and welcome to the Happiness Is podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness is Egg Shaped, and we're breaking down even more barriers today. Another first. We've had a few, and today is one of those. I am absolutely delighted to speak to this man who is doing things that I didn't know were happening. He's very creative. He's put on this show, this play, and he's using rugby as the stimulus to get a message out about mental health. I've watched it. I am privileged. I am one of the people who has seen it, and I hope it's going to go big, and I hope everybody in the rugby world and in the rugby family is going to get involved, and it's going to spark a conversation, if nothing else. And I think that will be one of the aims of this thing. So let's bring him in without any more time to waste. It's the one and the only Mr. Daniel Blake. Hello, sir.
Hello, thank you, Bruce, for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted. Now, I have seen it. You sent me the link, so I have been able to see it. I've not seen it live, and I do love live performances. Let's talk about what's happened so far. So you've had a run in Peckham, that
Yeah,
rugby hotbed.
that's it. Peckham's got Peckham really was where it all started for us. Myself and Nick Afoa, who was Simba in The Lion King. He's also an ex-New Zealand player. You probably heard him singing the New Zealand national anthem at the All Blacks game. Yeah, he was. Me and him started a collaboration workshop at the beginning of the pandemic called Redefine, collaboration between rugby and theatre. And the target of that was to keep everybody active and engaged during the pandemic. Because that's what, with Boris being like, you can't make theatre, you can't create, everybody's got to isolate. But they said one thing, and that was you could still do sport. So for us, it was like we can still create theatre if it was in a sports setting. So we sort of brought this collaboration together. We did it mainly to begin with to tackle issues surrounding mental health, toxic masculinity, and gender stereotypes within the sport. But what we learned was about this incredible community. And I've never played rugby. I'll say that straight off. I was sort of the kid who grew up loving theatre, dance, and for me, I always felt that alien world of rugby, but actually coming to grow into it, and through these workshops and through the movement of rugby and understanding the culture and having rugby players come and delivering these workshops to 15 grown men on a field, I've come to absolutely adore the sport, and I'm so passionate about this collaboration. I think it's an explosive collaboration between rugby and theatre. I think they work in harmony, and bring something quite interesting to the stage and telling stories that are needed to be told. So I'm hoping that with this piece, with Bones, it starts a conversation. It ignites the collaboration between both rugby players and theatre people, and just hoping more rugby people can come to see it. That's where we've started in Peckham, but see where it goes.
You're speaking my language there, and as you started talking, the hairs in the back of my neck went up when you were talking about how you found rugby and how you've embraced the community and it's embraced you. That's a powerful message. Now, the hope is that you go out into the world really and spread the word with this. What is the ambition?
Yeah, I mean, I love to dream big. I think anybody that's met me knows that. And with this piece, I mean, it's about keep pushing up the tier, keep getting it higher and higher. This is an incredible show. The writer, Lewis Aaron Wood, I've been working with him for 2.5 years on this show. I was just about to graduate drama school, and then the pandemic sort of like cut us short from actually being able to put on this show, which would have been my first professional show, sort of a drama school. But what happened was, with the pandemic, we sort of put that on the back burner. And now I'm ready. I'm ready to sort of take it on. And the first production of it at Peckham Theatre, was very well received. Got some incredible reviews, just overall positive energy leaving the theatre, which is, everything you could dream for with your professional debut. So for me, it was, where can we go now? I've always had dreams of this being performed to the rugby community. It is a play about the rugby players for the rugby community, tackling such important issues that I think, we share this, that, the passion that it is about talking about mental health and mental well-being so that we can put the players first, because it is a community. And where I see this going, I love to take it round rugby clubs, all up and down the country, so as many players, grassroots to professional, can see this show. Because I feel like if rugby players can see this, they can connect to it, and then that conversation around mental health becomes that little bit more easy and accessible to people.
So what?
So yeah, I
So
would
what?
love to take it around.
What came first? Did you need a story and then you found mental health, or were you looking for a mechanism to talk mental health?
So it comes in two parts, really. Lewis, the writer, had a script, and I managed to go see um, a very early draft at a scratch night over in London, and I was sort of gripped with the play. I knew that I wanted to create a show that revolved around sort of men's mental health, sort of tackling the stigma surrounding toxic masculinity. Had no idea it would involve rugby at all at that stage. But then watching Lewis's piece and hearing it out loud, I went, "This is for me." After having conversations with him, it was it was quite it's quite an eye opener early on, hearing he's a rugby player as well. So to hear his own experience and then that come alive on the page, I was like just drawn in from the passion. And for me, anybody that's passionate, sort of is ticking my book. I think it's quite incredible. And I hope after you've watched the recording of the show, you can see that the way that the writing and the physical theatre, the movement that I've brought to the show, just really comes alive and authentically represents the rugby community. Because I think that's always the worry when you do a show about a different community that you've got no experience in. I worked with rugby teams throughout this whole process. Dodgers Sevens, an incredible team that are doing amazing work in this industry, led by Dom Hardman. I had them on board from very early to sort of work through the movement and the physicality of actual rugby players. Bless them, I got them to do all sorts of fun workshops and movement exercises, but they all just give their all. And I think it's paid off in the end because the movement of the show is quite interesting. Super proud of it. I think it captures the essence of rugby, and I can't thank the cast enough. I mean, Ainsley Fannin, Samuel Holt, Ronan Cullen, and James McKay. Night after night, they were putting in 110% effort into those tackles, and it showed. They were battered and bruised by the end of it, but I'm super proud of them. Each one of them just gave the all. And I think they just embraced the rugby culture of it all and just got stuck in and put their heads down and just absolutely nailed their performances, each and every one of them.
I
Yeah.
loved it, but I have to admit, it's like sport. I would much rather be there.
Yeah.
That connection to, you can watch sport on TV, like watching the Champions League or the Champions Cup, and you want to be there. You watch theatre on TV, during lockdown, it was one of the
Yeah.
things people were beginning to branch out, maybe. Or we watched Hamilton as a family. We watched James Corden. We watched all.
Nice.
But watching a stage performance on a screen is not like being in the theatre watching it. So I really hope that this gets up and running and gets mobile and gets out, because I want to go and witness it in person. I've been reading a book recently, Eddie Jones, the English rugby coach, and
Yeah.
to help Maro Itoje on his leadership, they sent him to acting lessons.
Incredible.
So maybe there's a little cameo for Maro Itoje coming up in this somewhere.
If he wants a part in the show, I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
let's connect
hit
through social
hit me up
media.
in the DMs. We'll be
Yeah.
there.
But it's an interesting one. You've mentioned the phrase a couple of times, toxic masculinity, which
Mm,
is an interesting one. It's that kind of bloke lad culture that is
mm.
still a part. It's in club rugby, it's in student rugby still, although there are moves to try and change that, and it's definitely in the professional game. Now you're coming from an industry, you're saying you didn't know about rugby. Um, but toxic masculinity is something you've said a few times. Is that because it's alien to the environment you're coming from, or is it something you've experienced?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. With toxic masculinity, it's often perceived, I guess, the sort of top of the food chain when you talk about that. It's normally associated with the most horrendous men in the world that abuse women and um yeah, the top of that sort of like what you could think a toxic male to be. But actually I think the issue starts further down with the sort of lad culture coming in with, like, the phrase is sort of like man up. And um what we wanted to achieve with this show is it's not about the rugby community portraying that image. I think the rugby industry has been stereotyped with this masculine image, which I think can be off-putting to people that don't fit that mold. However, when you actually examine and look at the rugby industry as a whole, it's full of men of completely different shapes and sizes. It's now full of incredible female rugby players and transgender rugby players out there. And I've had a privilege of being able to talk to as many players as possible over my time, and hope that this sort of conversation leads to more conversations within the rugby community. But this show it's looking at examining the conversations said happening within the pub, within the changing room, that we don't fully understand sometimes the weight of the conversation. um as you've seen throughout the show, our lead character Ayres struggles with his mental health and sort of feels like he's taking on an entire rugby team by himself, which I think is a wonderful metaphor for mental health in general. Is that feeling of being alone? But actually, what it is on paper is that you're not alone. The rugby community is behind you. Your rugby team is behind you. No matter what level you're at, the players create the community. So with this show, it's not about labeling the rugby community as people that uh, people that perpetuate toxic masculinity, but instead it's actually showcasing ways in which we as a community can tackle these minute microaggressions of toxic masculinity. The stuff like, not calling people a pussy within context. It's all about trying to really tackle those microaggressions so that we have a better standing point, I think.
I like that phrase, a microaggression. I don't want to give too
Yeah.
much away because there are people listening to this and watching this that won't have seen the play. But the lead character struggling with his mental health, there were so many points through the play where there was enough of an access that next question could have been asked, or his teammate could have maybe got a little bit further, or made a judgment or sought help. I can look back, having been involved in the game for a long time, and there are now men, because I've never coached women. There are now men who I know have mental health issues, and I look back and I think, I wonder if that was when I should have had my chance, or that was when I could have asked the second question, or that. How important was it to get that message across? Because I feel like you're really looking for action off the back of this. This is not just a thought piece to then walk away. You're looking for some action out of this.
Yeah, 100%. We use this idea of a ticking clock a lot within the rehearsal room, and constantly reminding the cast that there is that constant time pressure. I think almost like a game of rugby is the first scene is set 2 minutes before time's up. So for us, it was like constantly throughout the show, because this is something that you can't mess around with. This is someone's mental health that is on the line, and I think Ed, we see it throughout the show develop. Um, but what's really interesting is his friends within the show, their perceptive of mental health and how you have Ainsley's character Will, who's the almost the comic relief of the character that is always that typical lad, always having banter and making jokes, but
But
then
you've done
actually,
that well because every club has got one, at least one of them.
yeah,
And you've got a cast of only four, so trying to get all
mm,
those characters from a club into four people, if you hadn't had him, you were missing a huge part of a rugby changing room, a rugby
100%,
squad. You needed to have that guy that always has the comment or the name
yeah.
calling or is ready to go to the pub, but that person's going to live forever. So having him in there was really important, I think.
Yeah, and it lightens the piece as well. I think you need with this sort of show, it can get quite heavy quite quickly if you don't. So for me, the comedy aspect allows the audience to feel safe and to connect with it. I think we can all look at Ainsley's character and go, yeah, I know that person. I think with each of the lads, you can go like Sam's character, the captain of the team. We all know captains like that, and his priority is the team. And we all know that we all will give 110% to a rugby game, and each game matters. So his driving force, putting everything aside and putting the game first, speaks the passion for us. I think that's what drew me to the script initially was Charlie's passion, such a drive to play the game that no matter any sort of injury, you would get up and carry on and play the game because that's what the team needed. And I feel like the message of the show really is that we treat a mental illness the same as what we would a physical illness, and I think that is really key in sort of like turning that conversation on mental health, because if we can start to look at mental health almost like a broken arm, you would get a broken arm fixed. You'd go to the hospital, you would get it fixed. So why would we not do the same with our mental health? I think it's really important for our mental well-being, as well as just building that community. Our character simply doesn't want to play the semi-finals because of the ultimate pressure behind that. So for us, it's like, if he had a broken leg, you would say, oh, set off the gate. Obviously, you can't play this weekend, but I think there's something quite important about saying, okay, you're not 100% there. I think you should, take this weekend off, and then supporting it. And I think there's so many incredible uh, people behind the scenes sort of rugby side that are actually pioneering the conversation of mental health within teams. Um, and you can see it a lot more that sort of the mental health of the team and the players is being put first, which I think is how it should be. But yeah.
Yeah, there's also a part of it for me looking at the characters, and as I say, you're trying to get a whole club into four people, but the person that's struggling with mental health is the person that everybody's looking at thinking, well, why would you have any issue with mental health?
Mm,
And that's one of those naive things about mental health, that if you're the best and you're successful and you're good looking and you're all those, then why would you have an issue with your mental health? That I hope is going to lead to a same conversation, but a different strand to it about mental health, that it can impact anyone.
100%. And I think that's completely right. I think, you know, mental health can affect each and every one of us. And taking that for granted is quite a slippery slope, because it could happen throughout no fault of anybody's. It can come and it can take hold of you. And I've dealt with mental health issues in the past, and I know the sort of struggles that it takes to get through. And I'm still learning, and I'm still sort of gauging my levels in terms of my own mental well-being. So it's really important, especially showcasing a story about rugby players that suffer with mental health. If you had looked at our cast, you would think, you know, oh, these men, they wouldn't struggle with their mental health. So I guess as much as this show is for the rugby community, I think it's going to help the rugby community by showcasing it to a much bigger audience. Because then society can also see that, you know, just because you're big and strong and, you know, you can tackle your way through the pitch and through other players, doesn't mean that you're immune to mental health, and you can still suffer. And yeah, hopefully that this show inspires people to talk and to have these open conversations. And, you know, whether it's a quick conversation with the lads after training, you know, within the safety of the rugby pitch. You asked where I'd love to do the show. I would absolutely love to take the show and put it on a rugby pitch, because I feel like that's your safe space. My safe space is sat in a theatre and lights go down and I can relax a little bit and just get immersed into the world. But I assume that's the exact same for you guys, is, you know, going into the stadium, putting the boots on. When you get onto that pitch, everything fades away. So I'd love to gift this show to the rugby community, put it full front on a rugby pitch, invite as many rugby players as we possibly can, and yeah, get them to see their story be told on their stage.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I remember years ago I used to get the football magazine 442, and I remember there being a quote in there. Someone said that the only place they felt safe was within the white lines, but there are other players who actually that's where the anxiety comes. Whether, oh, not necessarily anxiety, but sometimes the pressure of mental health, whether it is because there's so many people watching or because of their importance to the team, or they don't want to make a mistake, and that can then trigger. But there are people who need that. You know, there's some high profile footballers who weren't functioning in any other space other than between the white lines. So it's a conversation that hasn't got a box, has it? It
No,
continues to come out with the box, and there's no two are the same.
100%. And I think that's why adapting to each situation and scenario and player is key in this. It's not us about, and I think that's what Bones does really well in depicting each individual player. And what we learn is that, yeah, that idea that not one box fits all. So as much as we can, you know, believe that we're doing the right thing, sometimes we have to just adapt that for different situations, and that's fine as well. And I think giving the player the space to be able to say, I feel safe here, I don't feel safe here, I think that's a really important first conversation, because then you can start building upon that. You know, I've met many rugby players, and that, you know, they're like, oh, my safe space is the pub. And I'm there like, you know, that's absolutely fine. I think it whatever your safe space is, as long as it's healthy, then I think that's a perfect place to have a conversation. I think, yeah, looking at alcoholism and stuff like that, you know, that can be quite a difficult, slippery slope. But in terms of an actual safe space to have a conversation and changing the environment and changing the conversation that's been had in that environment, is really important. I think somewhere like the changing room, for example, you know, from the start of the show where you see the lads, you know, full force after the quarterfinal match, you know, that high energy, there's a lot of name calling and cat calling throughout that scene. But then towards the end of the scene, there's some really heartfelt conversations that happen in the changing room. And I think it's about showcasing the diversity of the space, because that, everybody finds safety in certain areas. People find it in their homes, people find it on the pitch, people find it in the theater or in parks. And I feel like, yeah, we just need to open that conversation up a little bit more. And
Yeah. No, I love the changing room. That's the thing I miss the most about being a player, is the changing room. And I talk to people about this a lot. It's where you see people at their best and their worst. You see them quite literally stripped down. You see them, when they've won and the world is perfect, and you see them when they lose and it feels like there's no tomorrow. So I love the changing room, and it is an important place, and hopefully it is a safe space. But that way that you've described there, it can be fully charged, and if it's fully charged, then maybe we're not able to show ourselves as we are. So the future is hopefully to get out and to show this and to start the conversation. So your stimulus for this was quite a personal one.
yeah, yeah, for me it was engaging with a community that I never felt safe within, and sort of with the hope that I can inspire more people to look at the rugby community with more of an open mind. More than anything, I think that, you guys obviously get the brutal end of the stick, really, in terms of stereotypes. But actually, what I've learned from the rugby community and what we want to show about the rugby community is how passionate you guys are, and how driven, but also how much of a community you are, the friendships, it's something to really admire. We talk about it all the time in terms of bringing a cast together on stage. We have people come from all over, they join a cast, and we have to rehearse a show in 4 weeks, and then we put a show on. But we talk about family and having to build a family. I've learned so much about that process just from my work within rugby teams, and how you all, connect. And, if I can have a cast within a show have the same level of community as a rugby team, the level of shows are just going to keep going up and up. I think it's so impressive. But yeah, I also really wanted to do it because my family's massively into rugby. My uncle plays in Derby, and yeah, they're just huge rugby heads in my family. But I never really got into it. So I always thought I really disappointed my dad when I was younger, because I was like, look, I was always the smallest kid on the pitch. I was never really felt like I fit in. So when I sort of told him over Christmas dinner that I wanted to do a play about rugby, he sort of like patted me on the shoulder and said, "I don't think this one's for you, Dan. But no, it was a real privilege to sort of, put this on. I was so grateful that my parents got to come to London to see the show. That meant a lot to me. And yeah, so for me, it was putting on a play that has so much meaning personally, but also I feel that level of trust from the rugby community to tell this story. And I don't want us to come across as, we're a theatre company that are trying to put on a play about rugby. No, no, no. We are a collaboration company that really brings together both the amazing qualities of both theatre and rugby to portray a real story. This isn't fiction. This is real life that we're portraying on stage. And I feel like, oh, there's a wasp. Yeah, it's such an honor to be trusted with such an important message, and such an important show. And yeah, I can't wait to see it sort of grow. Yeah, and see where it
Yeah,
goes.
I'm looking forward to it coming north. So Daniel, I've absolutely loved speaking to you. Thank you for the honour of being able to watch it. When you sent me the link, I got there eventually, but I've watched it and I've enjoyed it, and I think I'll watch it again. And I think I'll watch it with my wife so that she can have a look and give it a critique as well, because she does that very well. What's
Fantastic.
the future then is to take it out? What's the future for you?
God, it's a big question. So I've sort of just finished drama school a couple of years ago. So graduated with my master's in theatre directing. Uh, yeah, I just want to build this dream. Hugely passionate about directing and making theatre and making theatre accessible. I think for me that's the most important thing is perceiving new work through new lenses. It's offering the theatre out to the community and out to people that never thought theatre was for them, and inspiring sort of the next generation of theatre makers and theatre audiences, whether that's theatre and rugby or whether that's musical theatre or straight plays. I can't wait to sort of showcase sort of my ability to direct, but also the collaboration between different areas of the world and bring them together on stage. So
I
yeah.
love it. I absolutely love it. So Daniel, at the end of these, I usually ask the guest to
Oh,
finish the sentence. I did prompt you a little bit, and you've not really
yeah,
had time to think because you've
I've not
been
had time.
you've been talking. So Daniel, for you, happiness is.
Happiness is the collaboration between rugby and theatre.
Love it. I'll take that. I'll
Amazing.
take that one. And if you've got a role for a slightly overweight, bald Scotsman, then
Absolutely.
you use me. I'm fresh. I do have 3 years as a panto dame on my CV. So
Oh,
uh,
incredible.
anything in there, anything in that genre, I'm your man. I'm your man.
100%, 100%. And we'll see you in Scotland with Bones soon.
Yeah, let's make it happen. Let's get to Edinburgh Festival. Let's take it to rugby clubs. I'm there. I am absolutely there.
Absolutely, man.
Daniel, fantastic to see you. I look forward to meeting you in
Thank
the
you so
flesh at some
much.
point very soon. Thank you, my man.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And another area of the rugby world, hopefully helping this mental health message get across. We've got to start talking. We've got to keep that conversation going. And I think this play is going to provide the stimulus for it. Hopefully, it's going to be coming to a theatre, a rugby club, or a pitch near you very soon. Please get there and support. Daniel Blake, you heard it here first. Watch this. I'm going to be one of those people that say I spoke to him right at the beginning. I was there right at the beginning. He's got me to thank for it. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, you can listen to us on Apple, Acast, and Spotify. You can watch on Facebook and YouTube. Tell your friends. We're way over 35,000 downloads. We've got to be doing something right. That can't just be my mum. So please leave us a review so that other people can find us. In the meantime, my name is Bruce Aitchison from the Happiness Is podcast, and my happiness is egg shaped. Look after yourself, stay safe, and I look forward to speaking to you all again very, very soon.